Okay. It says we're live. Hopefully everything's going well here. Let me make sure everything looks and sounds okay. Seems like it is. Welcome everyone. This is On Just Restart. This week I am joined by Stealth. He has both a Twitter and a Twitch channel. His Twitter is linked in the description below, and you can find his Twitch from there as well. We're going to be talking about Nintendo as we usually do every week, but first off, Stealth, thanks for coming on. I'm really excited to have you on tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so if you guys don't know who Stealth is someone who likes to talk about Nintendo a lot, like myself. And, you know, he has some really good opinions and thoughts, so I figured it'd be great to have him on tonight. There's lots of cool stuff to talk about. We have a lot of interesting things that happened this week. We got a new trailer for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and I wasn't expecting a release date so soon like this, but we got a release date, and it's coming out March 25th, which, to me, is sooner than expected. So I think that has implications for the rest of Nintendo's 2022 as well, and there have been some rumors that may or may not connect to it. But then also we've been getting news on Pokémon Legends Arceus as well. So there's just been a lot of cool things that have happened this week that may or may not have been expected by some. And I think all of that's going to put together a pretty good conversation tonight. Let me see here. Apparently, is the audio not working? Let me see. Guys in the chat, can you hear me? You should be able to hear me, according to OBS. Yeah, I see Vector3 saying audio's not working. Let me know. Okay, Koopa Slayer can hear me. So I want to make sure everyone can hear me. Alright, so Vector3, it might be an issue on your end. If everyone can hear me, good, we should be good to go. Alright, great, Lord Vader is saying audio is good to go. Thank you guys very much for clarifying on that. If you guys can hear Stealth well, let me know. But yeah, everything should be good to go there. But yeah, I'll let everyone in the chat roll in. But Stealth, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get the show on the road?
Sure. My Twitter handle is Stealth40K. I've been talking about Nintendo and RPGs on Twitter for, over 10 years now. Yeah, I'm just very passionate Nintendo fan. Fan of most of the Nintendo series. Yeah.
Is there a Nintendo franchise that you're not a fan of?
There's not ones I specifically dislike, just ones that I haven't really played.
Sure.
Due to time or not being my cup of tea in terms of genre. Star Fox being one. Metroid used to be one. I'm trying to play more Metroid games. F-Zero is one I just don't really play.
Okay.
I'm really Mario, Zelda, Fire Emblem, Xenoblade, Pokemon guy.
Okay, I mean, all those franchises, I mean, literally every name you've dropped, I'm a huge fan of all of them. But yeah, I mean, Zelda, Pokemon, Xenoblade, Pokemon, I said Pokemon twice, but Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Xenoblade, I would rank those in like my top 5 favorite franchises. Metroid's up there for me. You should try F-Zero at some point. Hopefully Nintendo gives us an F-Zero. I gotta say, to me, I mean, I'm a kind of like I like it when games get very challenging, so F-Zero GX is personally like really up my alley. But yeah, you should try F-Zero someday. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I have tried F-Zero. I tried it on the SNES, and I tried it on the N64, and I tried it on the GameCube. And the series is supposed to be fast, but it's a little too fast for me and my hand-eye coordination. So like what the series is good at, I'm not good at. So I respect that. I know it's a good series. It's just not one that I connect with.
Yeah, I mean, there's different like styles of like racing games, right? Like F-Zero is an arcade racer, but it's like uber fast to the point where like you almost really have to come and just remember and react on time, versus things like Mario Kart, which is a kart racer, which again sometimes can get pretty fast. You play like 200cc, but then you also have things like Gran Turismo and Forza. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of stuff there. But you know what? I'll tell you that with F-Zero, it's interesting that you say that for you it's a little too fast, right? But like that might be why like F-Zero is not really around right now, because you could argue that maybe they should change around the gameplay a little bit, because maybe it's just not mainstream enough, right? Like it doesn't appeal to as large of an audience, and Nintendo hasn't really given us one since the GameCube era.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think if F-Zero came back, they would add some quality of life features and different modes to make it more accessible.
Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily have to mean that they go away from the speed, but they have to maybe think about different ways, to your point, to make it accessible. How about how they go about doing that? Well, that's a whole other conversation. We have other topics to discuss tonight. But yeah, man, I think we have a lot of a similar taste, so I think, it's going to be some fun conversation here. But let me check in with the chat listen, as people are starting to roll in, and then we'll jump into the topics. Lord Vader, Mario Cisneros members, I see you guys were here early. Thanks for coming by, guys. The Elemental Hero, the Shadow Link Dragon Wolf King. What up, my party people? Hello, how you doing? Heck of a name. Cayman Rider 64, hello. I'm doing relatively well, thank you for asking. Nintendo, man, I really want a new Wipeout or F-Zero game. I would be very happy with any of those as well. DE Fox, hello there. I'm doing okay, thank you for modding, my friend. Maverick, you are here early, hello there. Vector 3, they could have a different speed setting like Mario Kart. 200cc is totally different game to 150cc. I was literally playing 200cc Mario Kart earlier today, and, it is a different feel. So, like, if for F-Zero, could they have, like, a different setting that changes the gameplay up a bit? Maybe. That's one consideration for sure. Birdman Senpai, hello. Thank you for modding as well. Divine Zenith, Ronnie Fazio, Abraham, hello to you all. Alright, so let's I guess we could just start things off with, well, do you want to talk about Kirby first, or do you want to talk about Pokemon first?
Let's talk about Kirby.
Alright, let's talk about Kirby. Alright, truth be told, right now I'm a little bit more hyped for Kirby, even though I'm a big-time Pokemon fan and Legends Arceus is a big deal, but yeah, let's jump into Kirby here. So we got this new trailer for Kirby and the Forgotten Land. We learned some new things about the game. You got Waddle Dee as co-op. There's a hub area. We already knew there was going to be big bosses, but we're seeing more of the gameplay. It's looking stunning, and we have this fairly early release date. But, from this trailer, what are some of your takeaways, Stealth?
Yeah, I thought the trailer was pretty sensational. It reminded me of a 3D Mario trailer. This entire game reminds me of, honestly, Super Mario 3D World.
Exactly, yeah.
And that was honestly the biggest takeaway, is we got to see a little bit of the map screen, where each stage is self-contained, has its own collectibles, just like a 3D Mario would. When you go in, and there's all these different unique locations. And of course they introduced a few of the new, absorb abilities. I don't know the exact name of, like, the shooter Kirby, and then there's the dig Kirby. And then there's a few others, a few other classic ones. And then they showed off a few bosses, and they teased like an Ice Weasel boss.
They like showed just like a little piece of it.
A little bit of it, yeah. And, we know there's like an ice world, I think.
We saw at least that one screenshot where Kirby's like going through like this very cold looking like stone area. I think it was a bridge.
But unlike Super Mario 3D World, there actually is like a hub, not a hub town, because you can't like go to levels from it, but it's just like a town area that, kind of builds as you play more of the game, and more things unlock, which I think is really nice. I have not been this excited for a Kirby game in a long time, because like I tweeted, like I feel like it's a 3D Mario game just with Kirby, a little bit. So that's why I'm super excited for this.
I think we're like 100% on the same page here. Like, I also get 3D Mario vibes, and 3D Mario is like one of my favorite things. Now, it's kind of interesting because I actually had a discussion with one of my friends here. What about Nodnarb? He's on the channel pretty frequently, and we had a discussion before Kirby and the Forgotten Land was sort of shown off. This is like what 5-6 months ago at this point, before the September Direct, and there was news suggesting that a new Kirby was in the works, that HAL wanted to go big, ambitious, right? And we were wondering, like, what could they do that would actually be big and ambitious? And obviously what we all wanted, we wanted them to try 3D for the first time ever for Kirby, but it was one of those things where, would they really go that far, right? But what we actually kind of thought the best way to kind of go about doing it would be to actually do something like Super Mario 3D World. And as it turns out, it's looking pretty close to that, right?
Yeah.
It's like that isometric style kind of gameplay. And you know what? I'll say that, I mean, I 100% to 3D World, but I'll say that of the 3D Marios, it's probably like lower on my ranks, even though every single one is really good. And one of the reasons why is because it was more of a co-op focused game, I would say. I prefer the single player focused games. But for Kirby, and for what it is, and having co-op with the Waddle Dee, I think this style might actually work out really well. And having 2 players on screen is a lot easier to get done and make it work smoothly compared to 4 like in 3D World. So I'm actually kind of, I think this might work out really, really well. And visually, I feel like the 3D Mario team made this game. Like, it's top notch.
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize that HAL Labs has been around for over 30 years making games, since like the original Game Boy and NES. But people don't see them as like the ambitious studio that can do a 3D game like this. Even though they do have, I think, close to 200 employees now, which isn't like a super huge studio, but they're very talented. So, like if this was made from like the 3D Mario team, I don't think anyone would have been shocked, at how good this looks. But I think it's particularly shocking, in a pleasant way, that HAL Labs is capable of a game like this in their first like real 3D venture.
Yeah. I wasn't necessarily expecting this, but I mean, to your point, they have been around for a while. We are celebrating the 30th anniversary of Kirby this year, and they wanted to go big, and they are giving us the first 3D Kirby. It's impressive. It's just impressive. Like, I didn't expect to get it this soon, and I didn't expect it to look this awesome. So I'm just kind of over the moon for it. But is there anything like within the trailer, save for the release date, because that'll kind of like have its own little discussion there, but is there anything from the trailer that sort of stood out to you?
Really the diversity of the levels, and the environments that they showed. They showed like a water level with like different pumps in it. They showed like kind of like a carnival area.
Yeah, that
desert area. And,
all of it looks beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, just the environments look great.
Yeah, I do kind of feel you there. Like, there is certainly the environments, like, yeah, you have your desert world, your ice world, like, there is that, but everything seems to have its own sort of, like, flair, and there is a variety there. One thing that stood out to me was that we're getting, like, a tropical version of the tree boss.
Tropic Woods.
Tropic Woods, yeah, like, that looks hilarious and scary and cool all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, they also showed Meta Knight, and I think, I could be wrong, I think in the town area there is like a Coliseum in it. I thought I saw it, and I think that's where that took place, not specifically in a level. So I think somehow like the Coliseum in the Waddle Dee town will play a role in the story, and that's where Meta Knight will show up, and I'm sure King Dedede is in this game. He has to be.
I'd be surprised otherwise.
Yeah, he has to be. So they showed the gorilla boss, which I think I forget the name. It's like Gorilla Mondo or something weird like that. I forgot the name.
Nintendo tweeted about it. But yeah, I mean, the boss looked awesome. Let me see here. I pull up the tweet.
Yeah, and so they showed the two bosses, the gorilla boss, and then the Tropic Woods, and then they teased the Ice Weasel. And I'm sure there's a bunch more bosses than Meta Knight 2 and King Dedede. And they look really fun. I know a lot of people, like, when I tweet about it, are concerned about the difficulty because, Kirby isn't exactly known for being super hard. So I am hoping that there is like a difficulty option.
Yeah, I know with a lot of the Kirby games, what they tend to do is like it's basically a cakewalk to kind of go through from beginning to end. Obviously, there have been exceptions over the years, but it's relatively easy to go from one point to another to progress through the game. However, if you want to dig a little deeper, if you want to find some of those extra collectibles and power-ups and things, that's where there's like that additional challenge. Like sometimes you want to kind of venture off the beaten path, and that's where you'll be like, oh wow, this is actually pretty hard to do. So I'm kind of assuming that's how it's going to be this time around as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I mean, and I'm okay with that. Actually, I found the Nintendo tweet. It's from Nintendo UK, which is why I couldn't find it immediately. Strong Armed Beast Goramondo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can share this for people on the stream to see. There we go. You guys should be able to see that. Yeah. It kind of brings up another interesting point here, like just how they're handling the bosses. First off, I love it when we have games, especially from Nintendo, where there's like a big arena with a giant mammoth boss, and then when they introduce the boss, they have like a bit of like a description, and then it's the big name, right? Kind of like, I mean, the first game I ever had like that was like Ocarina of Time when they did it back then. I fell in love with that whole sort of like motif, and seeing it here for Kirby and the Forgotten Land is very much appreciated.
Yeah, I do like that too from Ocarina of Time. That I think you're right. That probably is the first game where they did kind of like they showed the boss and had a subtitle for it, and it made it like seem a lot more epic than it probably really was.
Yeah.
And I agree. I do wonder how many bosses there are, how you get to the bosses. Are they their own stages on the map? And how that all works.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think we can assume that there's at least 3. Probably more than that. I'm gonna guess. I mean, they could be like per world, right? But I mean, we don't really have a good idea of how big this game is quite yet. But there's at least gonna be a handful. We did get to see like the overworld map though, and it's pretty, and you fly through on the warp star, and you're just traveling through, and there's like these different areas you can sort of access. So I don't know how big the game is, but there looks like there's a pretty decent amount to explore and enjoy in this.
Yeah, we don't know exactly how many stages there are. We did get like a coin count in the screenshot, and it was like 144 coins, but we don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And there was an option to access the stage list, which would have been it would have been a huge spoiler to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I think there'll be a decent amount.
Yeah, and to the point we were talking about earlier, like Kirby games tend to have a lot of collectibles and extra secrets to find, right? So maybe the base campaign, if you don't go for the extra secrets and stuff, it's not that long, but there's gonna be a lot of extra little things to do. And on that note, like you look at what we're getting with this Waddle Dee town, right? Like it's obviously an area we're going to be going back to a lot, and as we get more Waddle Dees, that will impact what we can do there, right? There's mini games to play, there's a lot of different tasks and things. You even pointed out the Coliseum, and that may be related to like different side events we could do. I don't know if it touches on the story. It may, I'm not sure. But between all of that, I feel like there's definitely gonna be a lot to kind of do. And actually, now me thinking about it, I'm not entirely sure how the Waddle Dee thing works, but I'm gonna. Is it a bad assumption to make that maybe the Waddle Dees is what we're gonna be collecting, and there's gonna be extra ones to find in the different levels? Like we may go through a level and not get all of them because some of them may be hard to get or find.
Maybe. We do know that that's like the collectible you get to build up the town. Yeah. But each stage also seems to have like a coin collectible as well.
Right. Yeah.
Because at the left of the name in the screenshot, there was like a blank coin icon. And I'm sure if you get it, you fill that out. And we don't know if there's more collectibles than that. But it seems like you collect Waddle Dees and you collect certain coins, kind of like Mario games.
Yeah, there's more than one collectible to get, and that adds more to the value of the game in terms of different things you can find and do. So I'm just excited for this. Like I really want to just dig into this. I think it's gonna be a good time. But one thing that really stuck out, and I mentioned it multiple times already, is the release date. So
yeah, what
do you make of this release date? Were you expecting it for March? Like obviously we knew from Nintendo that it was going to be a spring game, but we didn't know when in spring or if it would stick exactly to spring. I was thinking maybe May, but we're getting it in March in the same month as Triangle Strategy. So what do you kind of
Yeah.
make of that?
I was completely expecting it for March.
Okay.
For a few reasons. One, a few weeks prior, the game was rated by the ESRB,
Good
which made
point.
me think like the game, and like Splatoon 3 hasn't. So like it made it seem like the game was a lot closer. Because Advance Wars had been rated by the ESRB, Pokemon Legends had been rated by the ESRB. So to me, those made up like the early year games.
Sure.
And Nintendo does like to release a big Nintendo game, and Triangle Strategy is one of my most anticipated games, but it's not a Nintendo-made game.
Sure.
And they like to drop it right before the end of the fiscal year. So to me, like I was tweeting about it, like even before it made sense, the lineup was going to be, Pokemon in January, likely nothing in February. Often they don't have a game in a month.
Right.
And then Kirby and Triangle Strategy in March, and then we kind of know that Advance Wars is coming in April.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So to me, like it just made complete sense. So it's like I really honestly was not shocked at all. Like even from the first trailer, the game looked like
Very
ready.
polished.
Yeah, it looked ready. And Nintendo's not in the habit of announcing games that are so far out anymore. They're kind of over that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I was not surprised. I'm happy, because I want to play this like right away. So I'm happy for the earlier release date.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I wasn't necessarily expecting it for March, but at the same time, I'll totally acknowledge, like, that was, like, within the realm, because it falls within that spring period. And to your point, yeah, it's like a game to close out the fiscal year. And, that does make me kind of, like, wonder, like, do you think this Kirby game will be something comparable to other fiscal year ender games we've seen from Nintendo, like the Monster Hunter Rise, like
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild, like Animal Crossing? Like, do you think
Yeah.
this could be the best-selling Kirby game yet?
Well, I don't think it's gonna sell as well as Animal Crossing.
I agree with that.
But I'm pretty sure that Star Allies, I think, is the second best-selling Kirby game.
You are right. Last I checked, it was like around
Yeah.
3-ish million. It's like, it is the
And
second
then-
one, yeah.
Yeah, and then the original Kirby somehow is still the best-selling Kirby game at like 4 million, something around there.
4 or 5. Yeah,
Yeah.
around there. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if this reviews well and people kind of see it as like a 3D Mario game, yeah, I think it could sell 10 million units. I think it could sell pretty big. If it reviews really well. I guess I'm already seeing a lot of people tweeting at me like, I don't play Kirby games, but I'm really interested in this, or I haven't been this interested in a Kirby game in 20 years. So I think this game has kind of captured a lot of attention.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So, I think we're both inclined to agree that it's going to sell more than Star Allies. But,
Oh yeah.
I guess I'll offer a little bit of pushback, though, even though I do agree with you. Kirby Star Allies, well, I didn't buy into it because, I mean, I played the demo and it wasn't really grabbing me. It just felt a little bit too, I don't know, cookie cutter, maybe. There's just nothing about it really felt like super new to me. But at the same time, if I look at it from maybe a mainstream perspective, right? Like some people that don't necessarily follow Twitter and different things like that and pay attention to a bunch of YouTube videos, but just a mom that has a couple kids that are 5 and 6 years old, and they see Kirby Star Allies and they're like, oh, Kirby's a good family game. Oh, it's multiplayer. See that on the back, they get it for their kid, right? And for that reason and the Switch effect, I feel like that's how Kirby was able to get to about 3 million or so. My question to you is, do you think that that Forgotten Land can maybe get a little bit of that too, right? Because while I do feel like there's going to be a core audience that's absolutely going to be more attracted to Forgotten Land, like myself and you, will it also attract a bit of that mainstream audience that got Star Allies to be 3+ million?
I'm not sure, but I do think that a 3D platformer will appeal to the Mario crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a big audience. So
Yeah.
I think it has the chance to do a lot better than Star Allies. Because Kirby always sells at least 1 million units. It's pretty safe that way. But I do think this, assuming it reviews well and it's really good, I can see it just exploding.
Yeah, ultimately, I do agree with you. I do think that this is going to be a big seller. I find it interesting that Nintendo they are sort of positioning it as like that fiscal year ending game. But I do feel like I think it could exceed 5 million. I think it has a really good chance to become the best selling Kirby game. My only real hesitance is because it's so late into the Switch life cycle. Like, how relevant will it be for the coming years, right? Because, most Nintendo games have a bit of that evergreen status that allows them to get to those higher numbers. Will Kirby have enough relevancy for the coming years to get to that maybe like 10 million, like to your point? Hard to say, but I mean, one thing's obvious, right? Like, I think a lot of the core gamers on Switch see Kirby in the Forgotten Land, and it's a lot more exciting than Star Allies is, because it's something new, it's something that we've been sort of waiting for a Kirby game for a very long time.
I agree. And you're right, like, Switch isn't going to be around forever, maybe a couple more years.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this one will come out pretty fast out of the gate.
Yeah. I mean, it's enough time after Legends Arceus that I think, there's not going to be too much crossover there. Like, most people have moved on from that game. I think it's going to come out at a good time and be pretty darn successful. But, I guess we'll sort of transition at this point, unless there's anything else to sort of add for Kirby.
I think we covered it pretty well.
Okay, cool. So, but with Kirby coming out in March, it kind of makes me wonder what else is coming, right? Because initially, like I said earlier, my perspective was that maybe it would be like a late April, May game, but with it coming out in March, that sort of suggests that Nintendo might have a bit more of a denser schedule, right? Because we get Legends Arceus late January. February, I'm going to assume we're going to get a Direct, and maybe we get some like shadow drops there or something. Do you agree with that, by the way? Do you think we could see a Direct in February, or do you think we have to wait a little bit longer?
No, we always get a Direct February, March, usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think February's or early March is a pretty good bet for a Direct.
Yeah.
And they'll announce the games that come after. They'll announce the games until E3. Maybe a little bit beyond that. So they'll announce if there's any March or June games. They'll announce them there.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page there. It is conceivably they could go into like March, but February seems like a pretty good bet, especially because we don't have like any sort of big releases then. But then going beyond that, right? We have Triangle Strategy in March, and then Kirby and the Forgotten later into March. And as you brought up earlier, Advance Wars was sort of leaked and listed from different places as an April release and like an early April release. And assuming that's actually the case, Nintendo's coming out with a decent amount of games in a fairly short period, right? Like, yes, we skipped February, but Legends Arceus is coming out at the end of January, right? So then just about, 5 weeks or so later, we get Triangle Strategy. Then a couple weeks later, we get Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And if the leaks/rumors have proved to be true, Advance Wars comes out just a couple weeks after that. So that's like a lot of games in a fairly short span of time. And I would say that most of the times when we get like Nintendo games in sort of short periods of time, it's usually in the second half of the year. And usually the first half of the years tend to be a little bit more sparse. But if we're going to be getting this dense of a lineup in the first half of the year, the fanboy in me is like wondering, well, does that mean that the second half of the year is going to be even denser or comparable?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Normally Nintendo packs the second half of the year because that's when they get the most sales. That's just the way it's always been.
It's business.
I think they have a lot to announce this year and a lot to release. So I think it's going to be a crazy year.
Yeah, for sure. But after Advance Wars, what do we get next, right? Like, I would like to think that Splatoon 3, the latest we get it is July. And that's the latest. Like, it could come out before then. Now, Nintendo didn't tell us spring, so I'm gonna kind of assume it's not going to be spring, even though they could confirm it to be a spring release in a Direct, right? I think one of the sort of interesting points to be made with Kirby coming out so early, like this March, is that they could have Splatoon 3 come out in May. Like, I feel like that's maybe like the earliest reasonable time it could come out, and I don't think it's out of the question at this point.
Yeah, the only thing I'm sure about is that if Breath of the Wild 2 is releasing this year, it'll release in November,
Yeah.
the week before Black Friday, the week that Nintendo loves, for its biggest games.
Hmm.
So I think that's gonna be there. Then they're probably going to announce like 3 to 5 games, maybe more for this year. Like it doesn't seem like they could, but they'll be a bunch of directs. They'll announce games, and there'll be months where there's multiple games, like more than we know right now.
Yeah.
I agree with your assessment. Splatoon 2 released in July worked out pretty well for it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Splatoon 3 did the same thing. It's going to be a huge game. Bayonetta 3 could be October. And then they'll announce, maybe a November game, September, August. They have a lot of months they still got to fill.
And to your point, there could be more than one major Nintendo game in a month.
Yeah. And then even though they're not publishing Mario plus Rabbids 2, they'll probably not release anything around it. Because that is kind of a big first-ish party kind of game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's rumors of Metroid Prime 1 remake. There's rumors of a Fire Emblem. There's rumors of a Xenoblade 3.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kind of big Nintendo game rumors. There's rumors of a 2D Donkey Kong game. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting the second half of the year.
Yeah, and all those games I 100% think are real. From the sources and things of that, like all of that, I agree that they're all coming. The question is when, really, in my mind. The Metroid Prime remake, I think that's a this year thing. Remakes are in general a little bit easier to get done than a whole new game. And I think Nintendo wants to sort of like maintain that Metroid momentum after Dread. So I can see that getting announced at E3 and it comes out like a couple months later, maybe a September or October release. Donkey Kong, I'd love to see Donkey Kong this year. I feel like with the Mario movie coming out at the end of this year and the rumors of a Donkey Kong movie coming out after, and then the park, I feel like that's one of those things that could easily be like a 2023 or later kind of game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I mean the schedule, it's tough because COVID still like affects how the schedule is.
Sure.
And
yeah, there's a lot of fluctuation still.
yeah, there's a ton of fluctuation, and it's just hard to judge it.
Yeah. A few people were asking me to check out the Nate the Hate podcast for their predictions before the show. I don't know if you've seen that one yet.
I did. I did.
And they brought up some interesting things. One, they were talking about Fire Emblem, and this is like, I mean, I think a lot of people sort of expected Fire Emblem to be in development. One weird thing that was sort of said, though, is that from what he's heard, there's a Fire Emblem remake that's supposed to be coming, but it's not going to be coming out this year. Instead, we're going to get a new Fire Emblem game instead. And it's only weird to me, just the fact that there's multiple major Fire Emblem games in development at the same time. And we haven't heard of it either. I do feel like it is about time we do get another Fire Emblem, though. And again, to the whole point of Nintendo already having like the first third of the year is looking pretty dense, it does suggest that there is going to be a little bit more room for them to bring out games like a Fire Emblem in this year that already seems fairly stacked. So I do think we could very well see a Fire Emblem this year. And if so, I wouldn't be surprised if it's announced in a February or early March Direct.
Yeah, I mean, like pretty much all of the latest Fire Emblem games have been announced in a Direct, so that wouldn't be totally be surprising to see it. And like, since the series debut in like 1990, we haven't gone more than like 3 years since one's been announced or released. So yeah. It's time.
I feel like we're stretching it at this point. Like it's and I definitely think COVID has something to do with it. If it wasn't for COVID, I feel like we already know about the next Fire Emblem. Like if you look at how the 3DS was, there was at least 3 Fire Emblem releases during the 3DS lifespan.
Yeah. There was Awakening, Fates, and Echoes.
Right.
So that was 3.
Yeah. 3 generations, because I know there's like at least one that had like multiple versions, but like
Fates had a couple of versions.
It was like the Pokemon sort of direction, but yeah, there was still 3 sort of like generations or release sets of games. And right now for Switch, we're entering 2022. We're about to be in the 6th year of the Switch's life. So, and we only have one Fire Emblem. That's a little strange. So I do think, it's about time for that one. And that is like something that now all of a sudden I feel more comfortable in saying that probably could fit in at some point this year. But, another interesting thing that came up in the Nate the Hate podcast, there's a couple interesting things. One, he was suggesting that Mario Rabbids plus Sparks of Hope could be delayed into next year.
Yeah, I mean, that I'm not sure I believe. That was, there were a few things there where it's like I didn't want to believe it. But this one, I'm just not sure. Like, we haven't seen we haven't gotten a blowout of the game yet.
Yeah.
So that's maybe why. But I gotta think it's gonna come this year. I do. I really do.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with you, right? Like, if a company tells me a game's coming out and there's not like any like glaring reasons to think it'll be delayed, I'm just gonna take their word for it, But I guess another reason why is because I actually don't expect to see a major 3D Mario announcement this year. And I know that was something else that was brought up in the Nate the Hate podcast. And I absolutely think there's a 3D Mario in development, but I don't think that they're going to release it right before the movie. I think what they're going to do instead is that they're going to come out with a movie, and then sometime next year, there'll either be a Mario Kart or a 3D Mario to take advantage of that popularity after the fact. I feel like in general, when we see Nintendo take advantage of like these more mainstream like things, mostly with like the mobile games, that effect, that boost factor comes out, it happens afterwards. So I don't think we're seeing 3D Mario this year, especially because Bowser's Fury came out just last year. So I'm not expecting 3D Mario yet. I can see that maybe being like a holiday 2023 thing or Mario Kart, one or the other, and that'll take advantage of the whole like Mario movie boost maybe. And with that in mind, I feel like we do need something Mario this year, and Sparks of Hope makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, if Breath of the Wild 2 is really ready this year, I don't think Nintendo is gonna release like Mario in October or December.
Yeah.
I think this holiday is gonna be pretty dedicated to Zelda.
Yeah.
And I think if there's a new Xenoblade, then that'll come out in December. Like Xenoblade 2 did.
Yeah.
That just makes sense to me. I mean, yeah, I don't, because there's also rumors that it's the 3D Mario team working on the Donkey Kong game.
Yeah.
So I could see that coming out. And then Mario coming out next year. Because if they have Donkey Kong this year, there's no reason for a Mario game.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, also we have this Kirby game that's very 3D Mario-esque, right? And then literally a year ago, we had Bowser's Fury come out with 3D World. Yeah. And then if we also have this 2D Donkey Kong game, which if it is being made by specifically the 3D Mario team, I would actually think that pushes up this 3D Mario fair a bit, right? Like, I don't know if they would just put a new team on 3D Mario then. They could if they use the same engine, maybe. Now, with the 2D Donkey Kong thing, like, I know at one point the rumors was a 3D Mario, and then the later rumors were just, like, Nintendo EPD, which might be 3D Mario, might be another one of the other 9 or 11 teams that are Nintendo EPD. So it's a tough call, right? Like, obviously we won't know until Nintendo tells us, but either way, like, I do feel like we should probably wait. I think we should not be expecting a 3D Mario quite yet. But that does, to your point, like, especially if Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out for the holiday, like, I don't think there's a need for that. And if we're getting things like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Bayonetta 3 and Metroid Prime Remake, like, save 3D Mario for next year. 2023 needs some good games too. But on that note, though, I believe Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out this year. I mean, Nintendo's saying 2022. They've been saying it. It's maintained in their investor meetings. We've seen their marketing still pushing it for 2022. Like, especially with like the Game Awards trailers, and there's just different like social media posts. Like, they've been maintaining the 2022 stance for a while. And unlike with Breath of the Wild 1, like, both Breath of the Wild 1 and Metroid Prime 4, when they announced a delay for those games, if I remember correctly, both were in Januaries. So now that we're kind of like entering the second half of January, unless like next week Nintendo puts out a video saying, hey, we're sorry, we're going to have to push up Breath of the Wild 2, I don't think it's getting pushed out of 2022. I think it is going to hold its release year, and it's going to come out towards the end. Are you skeptical of its release timing, or are you also kind of like pretty confident that this time around Nintendo will not be delaying it?
I mean, we've been burned so many times before, you know, and I really want to believe, I want to believe that, you know, we're gonna get Breath of the Wild 2 this year. I think maybe it might have even been delayed from last year, and they just didn't say anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like 75% confident that we're gonna get the game this year.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up that it might have been a game meant for last year internally, and that actually strengthens my belief in it holding to this year, because when Nintendo finally showed off the game back at E3 2019, they didn't give us a release timing. They actually waited 2 whole years after that to give us a release timing. And I've talked about this in a lot of different videos, but like, you know, when I looked up like a lot of the big 3D Zelda games and how quickly from its reveal to the trailer gives us a release timing, it's usually pretty early on. We never wait 2 whole years into a Zelda sort of hype cycle before we get a release timing. So to me, what that suggests is that Nintendo has seen how things have happened with previous Zeldas, and this time around, they intentionally waited until they had a pretty good idea of when it would actually release. So with them now having told us 2022 and waited so long, they waited a couple of years to do so, I think that they're only telling us now because they actually believe that it is coming out 2022.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. But you know, you mentioned something also really interesting earlier, and then after this, we'll touch on we'll take some questions from the chat, and then we'll jump into the Pokemon topic. But you mentioned something interesting earlier, that you were sort of like, I guess you were sort of expecting Breath of the Wild 2 to be a November release. I also kind of expect that. Historically speaking, if you exclude Breath of the Wild 2, the big 3D Zeldas come out around that time. And I think Breath of the Wild would have come out around that time too if it wasn't delayed because they needed to get the Switch version ready for the Switch. But the weird thing about that, if that's the case, that may also be implying that you don't think that a Pokemon game is going to be releasing around that time?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, Pokemon Company has been releasing game after game, like, for a while for the anniversary.
Yeah.
I just don't know how much they have, you know, like, maybe they've partnered with another studio for a game.
Mm-hmm.
But like I feel like Pokemon, I feel like Game Freak has been pretty focused on Legends.
Yeah.
So unless it's like a side game that isn't being developed by them, I don't think, I could be wrong. I don't think we're gonna see another big Pokemon game this year.
Yeah. You know, I'm inclined to agree with you as well on that. I've been talking about it for a bit, and it's just one of those things where, I mean, Pokemon Company has been pushing Game Freak, and we've been getting annual Pokemon releases. I'm not talking about the spin-offs like Snap and things like that. We're talking about the Game Freak developed Pokemon games, right? We've gotten one every single year pretty much since, like, I mean, it's been a long time. I mean, last year we got Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. The year before that, it was the 2020 had the DLC for Sword and Shield. Then 2019 was Sword and Shield. Then 2018 was Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Then 2017 was Ultra Sun and Moon. Then 2016 was Sun and Moon. And I think 2015 was the last break they had in a year. But then, you know, they still had a decent amount of releases before then. They haven't had a break, really. And now, BDSP sure wasn't developed by Game Freak. It was outsourced. But Legends Arceus comes out 2 months later, and it's clearly a fairly ambitious product from Game Freak for what they've been doing. And with all the new Pokemon they're adding in here, it doesn't... even though the generations have been happening every 3 years, I don't think we're seeing Generation 9 just 10 months removed from the release of Legends Arceus with all the new Pokemon that's adding. I feel like it's a kind of... Legends Arceus is a bit of a generation extender. And I think we're going to be seeing a bit of a pattern change. And I feel like the earliest we actually see Generation 9 would be maybe to be like the fiscal year closing game for 2023, right? Like maybe it comes out March 2023. I don't see a November release this time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, Legends like isn't like a quote unquote main game, but you know the fact that it has new Pokemon, a lot that we still haven't even seen yet. I agree. It's kind of like I hope it becomes its own thing. You know, because that is very exciting. But yeah, I just don't see another big Pokemon game this year because I just feel like they've released so many that they have to eventually like need time to develop something.
Yeah, and I'm only suggesting like a minor sort of like push away from Gen 9. I'm not even talking about waiting till holiday 2023, which I think is in the cards, but like, you know, they could still get it out by the end of the fiscal year. They could save Generation 9 for a March 2023 release. And we've seen Pokemon games come out around that time in the past before they used to do like the annual releases. I don't know. It just kind of makes more sense to me. And, you know, I also think that if Nintendo has Breath of the Wild 2 ready for November, let Breath of the Wild 2 be that November release, right? Like, we've seen Nintendo sort of, like, push a lot of their games for October releases because of Pokemon. Because now, you know, typically, now Nintendo Switch is both the handheld developers and the home console developers, right? So we're seeing both sort of style of games there.
Although Nintendo has been known to release, like, 2 games during that special week, I think they did that for actually the original Super Mario 3D World and then Zelda Link Between Worlds.
Yeah.
You know, they released both those I think on the same day. If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, if they were divided by platform, we've seen something like that happen a few times, I think.
And Pokemon Company works very separately and independently. So if they had something, like I don't think they would be opposed of releasing it on the same day. If they have something.
Yeah, that's where I might disagree a little bit. I do feel like, well, just, you know, hypothetically, right? Like let's say Generation 9 is ready, right? And Breath of the Wild 2 is also ready. I don't think that they would release Generation 9 of Pokemon and Breath of the Wild 2 in the same day or the same week. But maybe they could be separated by 2 weeks. Like, that's not out of the question, you know? That's just my perspective, because they are on the same platform. If they were separated by platform, to your point, we have seen them do that before, where a Mario or a Zelda will come out on the home console, and then the Pokemon will come out on the handheld, right? Like, we've seen that. I don't know. I don't think they would do that, but, you know, Nintendo's done strange things in the past.
Yeah, there's just no way of knowing. Yeah, I'm just not convinced that there is a Pokemon game, but you know, they've surprised with just partnerships before, where they might just be working on something.
Yeah, and on that note, you know, like Generation 9 would be made by Game Freak probably.
Yeah. There's no way. It would be made by anybody else.
But let's say they desperately need like some sort of November release, or they really want one. Maybe to your point, they outsource again. What would they be outsourcing? Like, what would it be? Would they get another team to make like a Let's Go sequel?
Maybe. I mean, they could make like the Switch hasn't had an original Mystery Dungeon yet. Okay. They might do a Mystery Dungeon. I know there are rumors of like a Pokken Tournament too. Yeah.
I mean, so a Pokemon spinoff, I think, is totally in the cards. I just don't think like a mainline Pokemon game by Game Freak is coming for the holiday. It just seems like too much. I know there's rumors for Let's Go sequels or something, but like Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, I'm not saying it's Let's Go, but it's kind of like if there's a spectrum here, right? Like Sword and Shield being on one spectrum and Let's Go being on the other side. BDSP, I feel like, is almost kind of like somewhere in the middle. Or maybe even a little bit more leaning to Let's Go style to me. So it would be weird to me for them to follow up Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl with a Let's Go sequel just a year later, which would technically just be another type of remake back-to-back years. I think they try to spread out the remakes a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think we're going to see a remake or a new game anytime soon.
Okay. So let's check in with the chat here for a few minutes, and then we'll talk about Legends Arceus. Sound good?
Yeah, that works for me.
Cool. So I see that I have a new member here. Oh, message retracted. I thought I saw Dwan Davis. Regardless of what happened, thank you very much. Vooper, hello there. Good evening. With caps. How you doing? Alright, let's see here. What about Nob Narb stopped by? This new Kirby game is going to hit 5 million within a few months, in your opinion. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to do pretty good. Kitano Tatsu. I think because we now know Kirby's release date, there's less of a need to have a direct sooner. I'm expecting that Nintendo's likely going to push a direct into March. I mean, as we both discussed earlier, March is definitely in the cards. I think Nintendo could get away with doing a March direct. I still think it makes more sense to do it in February because there's going to be Nintendo wants to have, at least in my opinion, I feel like Nintendo would want to have like the discussion going for them. They want something in the conversation there. And maybe they save like an advanced Wars trailer for February, maybe. But I almost kind of like the idea of maybe there being a couple shadow drops occurring of smaller eShop releases, not necessarily published by Nintendo, but some things. And, having a direct then making announcements in February during this time where there isn't actually a new game to play from Nintendo, I think makes a good amount of sense. And then once we get after March, we don't really know what's coming. So I think it would also make sense for Nintendo to announce things a little bit in advance. Not to mention, if Splatoon 3 is coming out sooner than later, I think it also would benefit them to, one, give us a big blowout of that information, but then also maybe announce like a test fire, which maybe even happens in February. Not saying it will, but, it's something that they can maybe do. So, I side with February as a more likely time, but again, March is also still possible.
Yeah, and we also do need a new trailer for Advance Wars 2. And I think that trailer, like, unlike Kirby, you shouldn't just drop it. Like, that new trailer should be in a Nintendo Direct to get, like, the most eyes on it.
Right,
because,
smaller
like,
franchise.
Advance Wars, it's a harder sell. It's a really hard sell. So, I mean, I'm pretty confident in the February Direct. We haven't had one in a long time in January.
Yeah.
It's not like what they've liked after they settled on like their kind of somewhat pattern. So I think like February, early March at the latest for it.
Yeah, I don't think the Kirby trailer really pushes things up too much with that. Like I think we've even, like, for example, a great example. We had a Metroid Dread overview trailer shortly before the September Nintendo Direct. And I remember people arguing, oh, well, now since we got an overview trailer for Metroid Dread, they don't need to talk about Metroid Dread again before it's released. We don't need a September Direct. But they still did one. And they had an overview trailer for Metroid Dread in there, and it was slightly changed up a little bit, but, a lot of the elements from that overview trailer that came out from before the Direct were in the Dread segment in the Direct. So my point simply is here, we have seen scenarios where we get a big trailer for a game that's coming out not in the not-so-distant future, but then a Direct follows a few weeks later, and it still talks about that game. There's maybe a few extra little details there, but then they talk about everything else as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I don't think the Kirby trailer delays things too much, if at all. Let's see here. Abraham, you think M plus R will be delayed? What's M plus R? Monster Hunter Rise? Or Mario plus Rabbids? Okay, I see. Mario plus Rabbids. We haven't got a lot of information on it, right? Like, I don't know, right? But if there are insiders suggesting so, like Nate the Hate, like, I'm not going to say it's not. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, every game has the possibility of getting delayed. We just don't know.
Yeah. So, we'll see. Again, with rumors, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not, right? It goes both ways. So, we'll see. I don't want it to be delayed. And again, I also think it makes sense to have something Mario at some point this year. And if there's no 3D Mario and a Mario plus Rabbids gets delayed, can we get something else Mario? I mean, my answer, which I think is obvious, is yes, there could still be something Mario. We get Mario stuff all the time. Like, Nintendo could pull anything Mario out of their bag, and it was like, oh, here we go, right? Like, for example, we haven't had a ground-up, original 2D Mario for Switch yet. They could throw that out for this year, right? Like, I feel like that maybe you could get out for this year and save 3D Mario for another time.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if they were developing a Mario Maker 3.
Yeah, because they didn't really have paid DLC for Mario Maker 2, did they? They had some free DLC updates, but they waited a while, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, not paid DLC.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like, yeah, maybe they could do a Mario Maker 3. I didn't even think about that, but there's a lot of things they could do with that. Actually, one crazy thing, they could make a Mario Maker 3 and have it have 3D Mario levels. Like, that would be crazy. And I also don't think... Now I think about that, like, that kind of... Maybe that works, right? Because we also got... Last year we got the game creator. What's it called? I have it. It came out last summer.
Game Garage?
Garage, yeah, Game Builder Garage.
Yeah.
And you can make 3D Mario-esque levels in that. Like, you know, what if they were to make another Mario Maker and it's like Mario Maker 3D, right? So it's Mario Maker 3, but it's also like, hey, but you can make 3D stuff now too. I don't think that's out of the question. Now, would that come out this year? I mean, maybe. It's an option. You know, I'm sure there's gonna be something Mario at some point this year. Maybe it's not 2D Mario, maybe it's not Mario Maker 3, but there's a lot of options. So
yeah, there's always a Mario game coming. That's what people have to remember. Whether it's a side game, a sports game, something. There's always a Mario game.
Yeah, I think it would be more challenging to think of a year where we didn't get something Mario.
Yeah.
So there's a prediction right there. Something Mario will release this year. Book it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Joycey J, you're looking forward to Triangle Strategy. Yeah, you know, Triangle Strategy is pretty cool. It's Fire Emblem-esque, you know, and it has like that HD 2D style from Octopath Traveler and Bravely Default 2. So, you know, it's pretty cool. I haven't actually purchased either of those games yet, but I've played the demos and I think they're really cool. I just haven't gone around to them. But Triangle Strategy, it definitely looks fun, for sure. Are you going to be picking up Triangle Strategy, Stealth?
Yeah, I will be picking it up day one. I might even be picking up 2 copies, just not even to open. I'm super excited for that game. It's pretty much the strategy RPG I've wanted Square Enix to make for over 10 years now.
Wow. That sounds exciting. You know, I saw the box art for it. It was very like a somber, sort of melancholy look to it, which I appreciate. So, you know, I'm definitely have at least my eyes peeled on it. Depending on how things go, I could see myself picking it up. Definitely a good looking game though.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my most top 5 most anticipated games for this year.
Mm-hmm. It's gonna be high quality stuff. Let's see here. Abraham, I think the movie plus the new Donkey Kong game will be the momentum. Well, that's interesting, right? So maybe it's not even like a Mario branded game, but a Donkey Kong game. Because we do know Donkey Kong's gonna have a presence in the movie, right? Like they hired Seth Rogen to play Donkey Kong. So I do think the movie is gonna help to popularize not just Mario, but also Donkey Kong as well. So could they follow up the Mario movie with a Donkey Kong game? And then eventually announce the Donkey Kong movie that's rumored. Like, I don't think it's out of the question. And then Mario something will still release at some point.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I do wonder... I do wonder what kind of Donkey Kong game they're making. There've been conflicting reports of whether it's 2D or 3D. I definitely want to see it. Yeah,
I'm not sure either. And, you know, I remember kind of having this debate before Kirby and the Forgotten Land was shown off, because we were having the rumors for both the Kirby game and the Donkey Kong game, right? And I was thinking, like, well, okay, if they want to go really ambitious with Kirby, and it ends up being 2D, and then they want to, like, sort of revitalize the Donkey Kong franchise, and they go 2D as well, like, not, and I'm not trying to say that 2D is bad. Metroid Dread is my game of the year last year. Was my game of the year last year. It was really good. I was really excited they had a 2D Metroid, but I also feel like, you know, Nintendo should be a little ambitious with some of their projects and not just play the safes. Like, okay, well, let's just do Donkey Kong Country again. Granted, they can still do something crazy, and it could be in 2D. I mean, you look at Metroid Dread; they did a lot of really interesting things with that, and it was still in 2 dimensions. Whatever it is, though, I'm assuming if it's Nintendo EPD working on it, and the idea behind it is to bring Donkey Kong back to sort of like its prime time relevance back in the 90s, then they're gonna need to go big, right? Like when the Donkey Kong Country games initially came out, they were considered like some of the most like impressive games Nintendo was putting out at the time. They were ambitious for the time. Like I think that's when they had Retro on, and not Retro, Rare, and they kind of came up. I don't remember exactly what it was, but like it was like they were sprites, but they were based off 3D models, so there was like a very 3D look to the games. And this is a very new sort of style back then in the early 90s. So I don't know what they're gonna do. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, the Switch port, sold over 3 million units on Switch, more than the Wii U version.
And all it had added was Funky Kong.
Yeah, it sold really well. So like a new Donkey Kong, like it's gonna sell well. Like I'm not even worried about it, whether it's 2D or 3D. It's gonna sell well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just kind of more curious in terms of just like what we're gonna get to play, right?
Yeah.
And either way, I'm gonna enjoy it. I mean, the Donkey Kong Country games are some of my favorite platformers ever. But I also would love it if they were to try something a little different. And like I've talked about this before, but like imagine if they were to make like a 3D style Donkey Kong game, and it's a platformer, right? So they focus on platforming. But since Donkey Kong is a gorilla, what if they sort of focus more on those elements? Like, what if they had him sort of grappling around the air, more of an acrobatic platformer? What if they took cues from Tarzan, for example? Like, what if that was an inspiration there? And we see Donkey Kong moving about through like thickets and canopies, and he's just swinging from vine to vine, sliding through branches. And there's like a speed to him, but obviously also because he's a gorilla, there's a heft as well. Like, that could be something very different. And it would be really cool. But that's just me sort of like fanboying, speculating on something that would be really cool. Like, there's a number of things they could do that would be really cool for Donkey Kong.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of untapped potential. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of shocked when like Donkey Kong Country Returns came to Wii, like how innovative they got with like, you know, some of the like in-level scenes and themes that were very different from Mario. So you know, if whoever is developing it can tap what Retro did, I think it'll be successful. And of course, get David Wise back for music.
Oh yeah,
that's the most important thing.
It would feel wrong otherwise.
Yeah,
at least have him be a part of it. Like, even if it's not the entire score, like I think some of his music should be in there. Like, if you take a look at Jungle Beat, for example, like Jungle Beat's really cool, but when you listen to the music, it just falls short compared to the other Donkey Kong games. So definitely, I think getting David Wise on there is really important. We're just moving through the track here.
Yeah.
Joyce J, I'm so skeptical of Zelda release dates. I don't trust it until I see the full trailer and a solid release date. And by solid, I'm assuming you mean like day, like the actual day and month of the year. Well, you know, if you don't want to risk getting disappointed, I mean, I'm not going to fault you for having that perspective. I believe in the release date, right? But I also thought Breath of the Wild 2 would come out last year, and then I thought it would come out the year before. So, you know, I've been burned a few times. But this time Nintendo's actually telling us 2022, so I'm going to believe them. I think that if Breath of the Wild 2 is not coming out this year, they should probably tell us that sooner than later. The same way they had an announcement for Metroid Prime 4's restart, the same way they had an announcement for Breath of the Wild's delay, I think they would announce that, because that's the kind of thing that we've been waiting for a long time. And if they told us a release date, I think they will actually make a public announcement for it. I know sometimes Nintendo doesn't do that. It depends on the game. but Breath of the Wild 2 is the kind of game where they would, I think. I don't know if you feel the same way about that stuff. Like, do you think if Breath of the Wild 2 is getting delayed, they would announce it like in a video?
They need to pull that Band-Aid off very quickly.
Okay.
They need to tell us. They can't just wait until E3 to do it, or direct. Yeah, and for that game, there would have to be a video to like explain why it was delayed. Yeah, for that you got to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, if they did it, it's like, hey, look, guys, so we were making Breath of the Wild 2, and we realized that we want Link to not only be able to phase through buildings and stuff, but we also want to phase through time and space, so the physics are just going to be crazy, but it's going to take like 6 years, so
yeah,
wait a little longer.
Sure.
But just moving out of the chat here, let's see. Vector 3. I'm not sure there's such a thing as a 3D Mario team. I think Nintendo has said previously they put teams together for each game, but maybe Mario Odyssey's director is making the new Donkey Kong. You know what? I'm not entirely sure exactly on how EPD works. I know that they have different EPD groups, and they do tend to make one sort of focus on one franchise or another. For example, there's one EPD group that does work on Zelda. Now, granted, the EPD group, while they may work on Zelda, they do get help from other places. For example, Monolith Soft, which is internal Nintendo, they have a few of their own. There's a handful of Monolith Soft studios or developers, but none of them are Nintendo EPD, right? Like, so Nintendo has like dozens upon dozens of different teams, and oftentimes they do sort of help each other out. There is a lot of crossover there. So I don't know exactly what it is, but I do think there is a team that does tend to focus on Mario.
Yeah, I mean, Monolith Soft has a bunch of like support studios.
Mm-hmm.
Normally they've worked on Animal Crossing, Splatoon, Mario Kart. Right now they're working on Zelda. And then obviously Monolith Soft has their own games. I am curious, like, if they would be working on something else.
Yeah, like we did have those job listings of Monosoft working on a new IP from like 2017. So, you know, I wonder if that's been shelved or if that's what's going to get announced soon, because the rumors are that Xenoblade 3 is going to get announced soon, which I'm excited whatever it is, as I think anything Monolith Soft touches is going to be pretty good. But we'll see. Kitano Tatsu, where are the Gen 9 rumors coming from? I don't think they're necessarily rumors. It's more of just speculation at this point, like the implications of the release of Legends Arceus. There's not rumors that, at least not that I've been speaking on, for Gen 9. There are some Legends Arceus rumors, but that's a whole other thing. Okay, I got a little bit of a chat jump here. A couple more questions, then we'll get to Legends Arceus, actually. Kitano Tatsu, I feel Let's Go and BDSP have different core audiences, though. There's obviously a lot of overlap, but it's not entirely the same either. I do get you there. Random Gaming Dude, if next 3D Mario isn't a sequel to any previous ones, do you think it'll be linear or open exploration? I think Nintendo is definitely going to maintain the Odyssey style or the open sandbox style of Mario. I think them doing Bowser's Fury and just them seeing success with other sort of more open style games, I think they're going to follow that up. I mean, Mario Odyssey is the best-selling 3D Mario, so I think they would be mistaken to go back to 2D Mario, to linear Mario. They can have those linear Mario elements still in there, right? Like Odyssey still had like Galaxy-style levels, but it was more of a mix. So I think they're going to have more of that mix moving forward.
Yeah, I don't think they would go back either. At least not for the next one.
Yeah. We'll see. We don't. Yeah, exactly. At least for a follow-up. The Elemental Hero. Do you think they will add voice actors for Meta Knight and King Dedede to Kirby Forgotten Land? And what happened to King Dedede? I don't know what happened to King Dedede, but I think we touched on it earlier. We both think he's probably still in there. Voice acting?
I would love to see Sakurai voice a part.
Oh, that'd be neat. What if? I mean, I'm sure there could be some minor voice acting there. Dwan Davis, hey, yeah, how you doing? I got a question. Did you get my membership? I did get your membership. Thank you very much for becoming a member, Dwan Davis. I very much appreciated.
Is that Mr. Davis from Player Essence's chat?
Dwan Davis?
The name rings a bell.
DWAUNDAVIS.
It rings a bell for me.
Well, maybe. Dwan Davis, are you a fan of Player Essence? You on his streams a lot? Moving on here, I see Nintendo. When do you think we could see Metroid Dread DLC release if we do get it? So, because I believe Metroid Prime Remake is coming out this year, and because they didn't announce any Dread DLC at the Game Awards when it was the perfect time to announce it if they were going to have something extensive, I've now sort of transitioned my thinking. I do not think Dread DLC, like a paid DLC, is on the way, but I do think there'd probably be some sort of free DLC update. Maybe they add an additional difficulty or a challenge mode or something like that. So like a free update. And if that is coming, I can see that being announced in a February Nintendo Direct, something that could happen, maybe it's even shadow dropped in February to give us, something a little bit extra to do in February. And that would be kind of it. Like, whatever it is, it'll happen the first half of the year, and Prime Remake will be kind of like the Metroid goodness for the second half of the year. Dwan Davis, what's going on with the brand new Kirby Ninja Turtle game? I don't know. Right, I think we've touched on it before. Like, I feel like that's one of those things that when it's ready, it won't be that long before it comes out. Like, it could be even shadow drops. It's like, is that kind of game potentially? So I wouldn't be shocked if we get news on it in February in a direct. So we'll see. Hello there, the Geek Show. How you doing? All right. I think we can get into Legends Arceus, and then we'll come back to the chat to close out the evening. So, Pokemon Legends Arceus is coming out January 28th. There has been a lot of discussion on this game. There have been different trailers and commercials coming out. We had an overview trailer, and then we had a gameplay preview trailer. And we've sort of gotten a better understanding of Legends Arceus. There's still like a lot that they're holding back, which I actually appreciate. But we have a pretty decent idea of the gameplay structure for Legends Arceus. So, Stealth, from everything we're seeing so far, how are you feeling about Legends Arceus?
I'm feeling pretty positive about it, actually. I like that it's kind of Pokemon Company's take on Monster Hunter a little bit. It's not the exact open world traditional Pokemon game that everyone maybe thought it was at the very start. I like the art. I know people are complaining about the graphics. That never changes with the Pokemon fan base. But I like the art style. I like that it's doing something a little different. I like that they're trying to hold a lot back. There's, rumors of new Pokemon, and we don't know a lot about the story, and even more beyond like the first couple areas. And I like that. I think people are too used to Pokemon games leaking and getting all the information that way. Like Nintendo tries, at least with Pokemon, to hide it as long as they can. So, honestly, I think this game is going to be really good. I think I saw a tweet that like in Japan there are some stores that are already stopping pre-orders for it. There's just, I think it's going to do very, very well. Like maybe, I think it should have 1 million launch in Japan, which would be huge.
Yeah. I think Legends Arceus has massive, massive potential from a sales perspective. It's Pokemon, but with action, RPG, open-ish elements. It is perhaps more comparable to Monster Hunter than Breath of the Wild, but that's fine. Like, we're gonna have these larger areas to explore. Like, from the latest footage, like we've seen that you can actually transition from like being able to run around on Wardeer to just instantly being able to fly around or jump into the water. Like, it's like a seamless transition, and being able to fly around the way you can on Braviary, that's something we've never seen from a Pokemon. There's a lot of games that don't really give you that level of openness and exploration, even within maybe not fully open world areas, but large openish areas. So from that end, I'm just really excited because I love exploring in games, and Pokemon games I love. So being able to explore a world and seeing Pokemon and then being able to interact with them in different ways, which we've also seen more of in there, like there's different approaches you can do. That's all very exciting. It's all things I've actually been wanting for the Pokemon franchise for a long time. And I feel like they've been kind of moving in this direction for a few years, right? Like you look at like Sun and Moon with the ride Pokemon and different things you could do like with the camera and stuff. And then you saw how they added actual roaming Pokemon like from Xenoblade in Let's Go. And then with the wild areas of Sword and Shield and then more wild areas of the DLC. I feel like they've been moving in this direction more and more. Like every game you kind of see the direction the Game Freak is headed in. And I feel Legends Arceus it's probably like that last really big release before the end of the generation. At least that's how it feels to me. And then after that, Generation 9 will take a lot of elements from Arceus. Now, I also think, to your point, like with the Legends thing, like it's kind of like, they're doing their own thing. So hopefully they maybe follow that up in the future with another Legends style game. So it's not going to be like Gen 9 won't be exactly like Legends, but there's a lot of cool things they're doing there. But yeah, there's also a lot of criticism, a lot of judgments on Legends Arceus, because, yeah, I mean, if you put Legends Arceus next to Breath of the Wild, it's obvious which one's a better looking game. But, I feel like Game Freak has been pushing. Like, you see improvements game by game. Like, they are getting better. Maybe it's not good enough for what people's expectations are, but I feel like game by game, they're getting closer and closer to that expectation.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like no matter what Pokemon Company does, there'll always be complaints. But, people wanted something different. People wanted a more open Pokemon game, and this is it. So, people support it. We'll see more. If people don't, then I don't know if we're going to see a lot more, like, larger experimentation like this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, though. I feel like the game is probably going to be very, very successful. Now, where will it rank compared to the other Pokemon games on Switch? That's tough. And I think how it ends up selling compared to the other Pokemon games, I do think that will impact Pokemon Company's decision in terms of what direction they go. So I think Legends Arceus actually could have some serious implications for the future of Pokemon. I'm not saying that they're going to go away from the traditional style, because it's tried and true. It's been so successful. But if Legends Arceus ends up becoming like a 30+ million seller, then maybe they'll be like, okay, we should probably do Legends again, right? So it's tough. I mean, where do you see Legends Arceus sort of like falling in terms of like the different like sales of the different Pokemon games?
That's tough. Sword and Shield is above 20 million units, with an outside shot at getting to 30 potentially.
Maybe.
I think it's closer to 25 now, actually.
Yeah.
So let's get it past 25. I think Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, we're gonna get sales numbers for that February 3rd when Nintendo does their financials. Mm-hmm. I think it's past 10 million already.
Which is just insane if that's the case.
Yeah,
yeah.
I heard that
it was selling faster than Sword and Shield. I don't know if that means that it will actually pass Sword and Shield. But
no, I wouldn't expect that. But
it is selling better at first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already past 10 million. If Legends can get past 5 million, I might even be a little surprised. Just because it's so different. Again, it depends how it reviews, how people feel about it when it actually comes out. If it takes off, I think it could sell 10 million units.
Yeah, I'm feeling at least 10 million, right? Like you look at, I'm looking at like some of the sales numbers for different of the games on Switch. So the top selling Pokemon game currently is Pokemon Sword and Shield, and it's at 22.64 million. So like I do think that could probably get to 25 once everything's said and done. I mean, the Switch it's going to be in sale for years to come. So Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee currently is holding at 13.83. I feel like Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl will eventually outsell Let's Go. If it's really already at 10 million now, I could see BDSP outpacing that. According to this, like as of December 8th, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl is estimated to be at around 6 million. So if it was at that point by December, yeah, I could see it being over 10. Like, it's just crazy. I feel like Legends Arceus has a good opportunity to outsell Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. And when I say that, it's because I feel like a lot of the sales that went for Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee were kind of like old-time fans that wanted to revisit Kanto. And it was also the first Pokemon game on Switch, which definitely helped it there. But I think a lot of those fans that wanted to play Let's Go because of like the Kanto-ness are also going to look at Legends Arceus and be like, oh, I haven't really played Pokemon since Kanto because they haven't changed that much. Legends Arceus, though, is looking like the game I've been wanting Pokemon to do for a long time. So it's going to get a lot of those. And just the whole premise of a more action-oriented, more open-style Pokemon game, like, that's going to get in a lot of people. And because it's Pokemon, like, yeah, it's going to do really well. Now, I do wonder what Pokemon Company expects, because they decided to release it after the holiday, and maybe it wouldn't have been ready beforehand. Like, I do wonder, though, like, this Pokemon Company expect that Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl is going to be better selling than Legends Arceus, you know? It's hard to say, but I do think that Legends Arceus is going to at least exceed 10, and I want to bet on Legends Arceus and say that it's going to eventually outsell Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. So that'll put it above 13.83 million.
Yeah, that I'm not sure about yet. I mean, like, a lot of people I speak to are a lot more confident in the sales than I am. I'm just not sure because it's so different. Like, I feel like reviews are going to be... Like, if it reviews fairly well, like, I won't be nearly as concerned.
Yeah. That's a really good point, though, because, I mean, I have had that fear, though, right? Because it is so different, and because we have seen Game Freak sort of flop before. Like, look at Town, for example. It is possible the Legends Arceus, comes out, and the reviews that we'll probably find out, like, in, 10 days from now, we'll probably start getting, like, 9 or 10 days from now, we'll get reviews for Legends Arceus. Like, are those reviews gonna be bad? Like, is it gonna be, like, a game that's, like, on Metacritic, like, around the 60s or something? Like, if that's the case, and I don't think it's out of the question, then that could impact its sales potential. But, it doesn't have to be, like, a Game of the Year quality kind of game. But if it's, like, kind of, like, par for the course for Pokemon games in terms of reviews, then I think it would be well on its way to potentially being a top, a 10 plus million seller. It's hard to say because I mean, yeah, I am somewhat concerned in terms of just how high quality this game is. But the most recent footage, I think, is relatively promising because it looked like the resolution's higher, the textures seem to be higher quality, the frame rate seems to have improved. So I'm somewhat. I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about its success than I was maybe a couple weeks ago. Even though I've always been sort of thinking the game's going to do pretty good because it's Pokemon. Yeah. I'm going to say maybe, but to your point, if reviews come out and it's bad, then that's going to impact things somewhat at least. I have a question for you, though. Like, for Legends Arceus, like, are you more excited for Legends Arceus than you were for, say, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl?
Honestly, no. Only because I like the traditional Pokemon style. Mm-hmm. So, like, I'm just automatically going to be more excited for those. But it's not like I haven't been excited for Legends. I'm very excited for it, but, like, traditional Pokemon comes higher for me.
Okay. For me, Legends Arceus is the more exciting of the two, because it is something new, and it's a direction that I think is exciting for Pokemon. And I tend to love adventure games, so I'm really excited for what they can do here. There is some of that hesitance because it is something different, and it's Game Freak kind of extending themselves a bit. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they actually execute. That was not meant to be a pun, but. With Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, I enjoyed it, actually. I wasn't sure I was going to buy it at first just because, it's kind of more of the same. But, I did enjoy it. But Legends Arceus is definitely where I have most of my anticipation for.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable. I mean, it's a new... I mean, it's a game a game type a lot of people have wanted from Pokemon for a long time. So I do understand why, people would be more excited for it, and I'm not unexcited for it. I'm excited for both, and
right.
I just really hope this does well.
Yeah,
like I just want it to do well.
Yeah, I mean, if it does well, I mean that can say a lot of really good things. I mean, if Game Freak goes out and does something different and it's successful, I want to see Game Freak be rewarded for doing something different. I think doing that will have good benefits for Pokemon moving forward. So fingers crossed that it is successful. But I do want to touch on another sort of like semi-controversial topic around this, and that's kind of the visuals. I've seen a lot of people complain about the visuals. I'm sure you have as well. I don't know if it's my Pokemon goggles or something, but this has happened to me before, where I see new footage for a Pokemon game and I just get really excited, and then I'll have a live reaction, and then I'll look at the comments and I'll just see people just like, this game looks like shit. Like, why are you so excited for this?
Yeah, and I don't get it. I mean, like I see it like a pretty good looking game. Like, I really like the art style a lot. Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. It's like I just don't see what they see, or maybe I don't care. Sure, it's not like Witcher 3 level or like Forza, but I think it looks pretty decent.
Yeah, I also do think it looks pretty decent. Now, I'll say that when we got the first trailer, you could see that there was roughness around the edges, like there was a low frame rate with the Pokemon and things like that. But like the most recent footage, like, it looks, I would say, substantially better than Sword and Shield. I don't think that's a stretch. Like, do you agree with me there that it looks noticeably better than Sword and Shield?
I mean, I do think they're different styles, and
sure.
I like how Sword and Shield looks too. With its look.
I didn't hate it visually either. For the record.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get a lot of the visual complaints, honestly. And I don't really speak to like I purposely don't engage with that because there's no winning.
Good point.
But like, for the style they're going for, I think it looks really good.
Yeah. That is something to consider, the style. Like, it's like a cell shaded style, but there's also, I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but there is something that it's almost like they're going for like a painterly look. You see that with even the textures and things like that. So it's interesting. Now, once we get our hands in the game, we'll get a better understanding of how good it looks and how good it runs and such. But for me, as long as the game is aesthetically pleasing, like if it's pleasing to the eye, performance, I mean, granted, frame rate matters, because if the game is jarring, then obviously that's a problem. But I'm not even asking for like a 60 frame per second game if it's not needed. I'm not even asking for a perfect frame rate. It just needs to be something that feels smooth. That if there is frame drops, it's something that's barely noticeable, and it's a smooth experience that feels like a polished experience, and it doesn't take away from my immersion in the game. It allows me to actually escape, and it's something that I can play and be like, oh, that looks really cool. That looks really pretty. This is pleasing to me. Like, if they can do that, then I don't really need them to do much more. If they go something beyond that, that's great, but it's not like, I'm not going to be criticizing a game if it doesn't go beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, the frame rate seems to have gotten a little bit better from the last trailer. Mm-hmm. It's not really something like I immediately notice, and I don't really mind it if the frame rate's not great for games, depending on the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I care more about, how fun the missions are, and, a lot of the gameplay elements, how fun the battles are. But yeah, I like it's a very, it's like Japanese oil painting aesthetic.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, it looks pretty darn good. So I'm gonna get to the chat here, guys. We're approaching the end of the podcast here. So if there's any sort of final points or questions you want us to bring up, put it in the chat now. Is there anything else you want to say specifically for Legends Arceus before I get to the chat here? There are some questions about Legends Arceus in the chat, just for the record, but.
Yeah, I mean, we can answer some of those questions, so I'm good.
Cool. All right, so let's see here. Elemental Hero, do you think Legends Arceus was hinting of Gen 9 in some aspects, and if so, what country will they add to Gen 9? Oh, okay. That I see where you're going with that. Because we do see Pokemon games tease things for the future. I haven't been on top of that yet, so I don't know if there's anything in Legends Arceus that is or has been shown off that is teasing what Gen 9 could be. Maybe even BDSP might have some teases. I haven't been on top of that. So I haven't seen anything yet for what the next sort of region could be based off of quite yet. And there may not have been any teases yet because we may not be that close to Gen 9's release. However, I also should say that when Legends Arceus comes out, it's possible there may be some player somewhere, some NPC somewhere that says some sort of cryptic thing that might relate to Gen 9. Like, that's totally possible. In fact, BDSP might have had something too. Heck, Sword and Shield might have had something, but it's so subtle, you don't know until Gen 9 actually happens. We've seen Pokemon do that before. In that regard, you know, that's how I think Arceus is kind of... I don't know if it's necessarily hinting at Gen 9, but I wouldn't be shocked if it is. But in terms of like gameplay and stuff, I do think a lot of the gameplay ideas that are being used in Arceus will translate over into future Pokemon games. I talked about it earlier, like you saw like Ride Pokemon Sun and Moon, we're seeing those in Legends Arceus. You saw Rowing Pokemon in Let's Go, we saw those in Sword and Shield, and now in Legends Arceus. Like, there are mechanics that we see Game Freak try out in different games, and they may skip a game, but they'll eventually come back to them if they thought it worked really well. So they experiment with the ideas, and they... Oftentimes, when you see Game Freak try out new ideas, they are then executed a little bit better in a future game. So, in that regard, I absolutely think Arceus is teasing elements for Generation 9. Moving on here, Freaky Deaky is Legends Arceus going to have real-time action combat? They are including a dodge roll move from Dark Souls. I like action combat much more than turn-based combat. Any idea, thoughts? So... It is in real time. Now, there's still turn-based battling occurring within that real time, but you can sort of change it on the go with the speed and the two different styles. There's like the speed style and the strong style. So you are actually sort of causing fluctuations with that turn-based combat in real time, I want to say. And then also the Pokemon can attack you and you do dodge them to your point, you bring up the roll. So, I mean, technically it is in real time then. It's real time with turn-based elements. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything you have to add to that.
I think like 90% of the battles are turn-based, and then
Yeah.
like the boss, like new evolution Pokemon, are action. Like, it's different.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious to see how the balance is going to ultimately work out with that. At the very least, like, Pokemon can attack you in real time and you can dodge them in real time. When you bring out your Pokemon, that is turn-based, but that turn-based, those turns fluctuate in real time because of the strong and speed styles, I guess, or semi-real time. I don't know if you can jump out of that in real time and go back in. Like, we're going to have to play more of the game to see more of it before we're entirely sure, but the game's at least partially real time. Charles Trudell. Legends seems to be a higher effort than before for sure, and yet the backlash is as high as normal, and that doesn't make sense. It also renders true criticism hidden. You know, I think that's actually a very interesting point, right? Because we have seen that with the different Pokemon games, especially since Sword and Shield and all of that, like, since then, like, there was controversy and criticism before then, but when Sword and Shield came out and they announced that they weren't going to be doing the national decks, like, that's when, you know, the criticism became kind of more commonplace and more prevalent. And since then, like, every time it's a Pokemon game, there's so much criticism about it. I would say it is a little bit hard to sort of decide, is this just like blind hate? Is this just people trying to make a point because they feel like Game Freak made the wrong decision with how they should go with the National Dex thing? Or is this just, well, we're seeing something, we don't agree with it because it just doesn't look that good? So because of all that extra level of criticism that we're seeing on the internet and such, I do think it's a vocal minority, because if it wasn't, then why have the sales been so strong for each Pokemon game? But, you know, it is something that we see, and I do agree that it does kind of make it a little bit hard to get a good sense of what the public actually thinks of Pokemon overall. And I also agree that Legends Arceus is looking like a strong effort from Game Freak, but we won't know for entirely sure until we get our hands on the game and we start seeing reviews and we see how polished and put together it actually is. But, I mean, for me, it's promising. I don't know if you feel the same way about that stuff. If you feel like the criticism of Pokemon has become so common that it's kind of hard to gauge what most people actually think of the Pokemon games.
Yeah, I just try and tune it out and focus on what I think. I honestly just stop. I mean, it's given me the effect of stop caring about what other people think about Pokemon games, honestly.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, even when it comes to reviews for Pokemon games, I kind of just reviews. Pretty much Pokemon games reviews, and they average around 8 out of 10. Like, they usually fall within that range.
Yeah, it's usually low 80s, high 70s, which is fine.
Yeah. And the something I take into account is that if you're a longtime Pokemon fan, there's a lot more you get out of it than, say, what the typical reviewer may get out of it. Like, for example, if you're a competitive Pokemon fan, there's so much to the competitive scene that won't really be taken into account by most critics, for example. Or if you are a collector, like, there's that, right? Or if you're just a fan of the lore, like, there's so many different elements to Pokemon, which also makes it harder to sort of, like, make every Pokemon game. I don't know if people really take it into consideration as often, because Game Freak comes with a Pokemon game almost every year, and each Pokemon game has over 1,000 characters. If you account for the NPCs and every Pokemon, the different forms, there's over 1,000 characters to program for and create animations for and all these different things. And then there's a story behind it, and there's a lore, and there are quests, and there's a world to explore. And then, so that's the entire single-player experience, but then they're also making it a multiplayer experience. It has an online experience. It has various modes and things you can do. And there's this entire competitive format that has world tournaments with different actual formats, and they're both local and unofficial and official. Like, there's so much to Pokemon, and every game, all this has to be taken into account with each release that comes out almost every single year. I don't think people really consider just how much work is going into these games. They just say, oh, look, it doesn't look as good as Breath of the Wild, therefore trash. But it's not just the visuals. There's a lot more work that goes into it. Take Smash Brothers, for example. Smash Brothers, like, there's a lot of fighters, and each fighter has a lot of love and attention put into it, but they focus on one particular thing. There isn't, like, an amazing single-player experience. They focus on the multiplayer. Breath of the Wild doesn't have multiplayer. It has just single-player. Pokemon does both, and there's a lot to both. So, just saying, like, I don't want to come off as, like, a Pokemon apologist, but there's a lot that goes into these games, and I don't think that's always considered when people just kind of start to go at them with the criticism.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Thank you. I see I have a super chat here from Midnight Naomi. Thank you very much for the super chat, Naomi. So proud of you, bro. Finally got memberships up and running. Was hoping for a $9.99 tier, but I guess I can make up for it for super chats if I'm able to catch the live streams. Make it a great year, man. Thank you very much. That's very much appreciated. I mean, right now we just set up the memberships. Maybe we'll add a third tier in the future if you guys express interest in that. But nevertheless, thank you very much. It's very much appreciated. David Q, I'm also very conflicted with that. Like, for example, the Buizel looking out of place in the trailer. I have seen some people put out there's like this one part where there's a Buizel and there's also a Lopunny in the water. I don't know. I think we might need to see more of the game to see how that all looks and runs. Sweet Life of Dio Brando. I just hope Game Freak starts realizing the importance of post-game again. I do really like post-game. And it does. I will say that Sword and Shield's post-game left if you focus on, like, the battling stuff, there's a lot. But if you're talking about, like, in terms of story and adventuring, that's where it kind of lacks a little bit. But in terms of combat and doing things, I think there's always tons to do in Pokemon. Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I don't think there's much to complain about Sword and Shield anymore, especially with the DLC packs, which are pretty massive and add a good amount of story content.
Good point.
Obviously it's more expensive, but, I think if you include that as, like, one Sword and Shield package, I think Sword and Shield is really quite impressive. Yeah, but this is a different style of game, though. This is like Monster Hunter a little bit, and like Monster Hunter, has there's no, like, quote unquote post game. There are harder hunts and levels to hunts and things like that.
The game just kind of doesn't end, basically.
Yeah, it doesn't end, and I think that might kind of be like what this is gonna be.
That could be the case. And actually, I'm kind of curious on your thoughts here. Like, I know it's early, but I do this. I always look ahead. Do you think Legends Arceus could have DLC, like a paid DLC?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it could have an expansion pack with like legendary Pokemon or some kind of story thing. I certainly think it could.
So my theory, it's not like a greatly explored theory, but I think there might be something to this, is Giratina origin form.
Yeah.
Because we don't have that in BDSP, and I feel like they could make an entire DLC quest. They could come out during the holidays, so that way they have some sort of Pokemon release for the holidays, and it's just DLC for Legends Arceus. And maybe they add another area or two to explore, kind of like maybe like mimicking like Sunbreak for Monster Hunter Rise. And the big sort of quest monster for that is Giratina O. Like Arceus is like the big thing for Arceus, but maybe the expansion content could be about Giratina O. And that's how they get Giratina O into the Pokemon games, because I do assume eventually all this will be available on Pokemon Home. I think they've confirmed that already, but yeah. So I can kind of see that happening in the not so distant future. Going on here. Okay. Dwan Davis, I see that you provided a super chat for me. Thank you very much. Apparently the message was deleted. I do not know what you said, but thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate that. If I see your comment in a little bit, I will look into that. Let's see here. Oh, I think he was mentioning something about Player Essence. Dwan Davis does watch Player Essence stuff, so I think you may have
the same guy
astutely pointed that out. Let's see here. Sweet Life of Dio Brown. I prefer Let's Go style of perfecting 380 miles and animation over recycling everything. I'm not really sure what to make of that. I don't know if I would say Let's Go was perfecting. But there was definitely, I feel like Let's Go had a little bit more polish than BDSP. But BDSP, I think you can kind of tell that it was outsourced. There's a lot of little things that sort of don't work the same way Game Freak tends to do it. Like I know there was this item I used, and I forget what the name of the item was, but it was an item, it was like to heal my status condition. It was like a weird item. And I thought that if I picked it on a Pokemon, I wasn't sure what it would do exactly, so I wanted to try it out. And if I remember correctly, most Pokemon games, when you try and use an item like that, it will just say, oh, this will not work. But in BDSP, I used it on the Pokemon, and then went into the actual back to the battle scene, and it just say it failed, because it's not supposed to work, so I lost a turn for that. I've never seen that happen in a previous Pokemon game, and I think it's a product of it being outsourced and it not being done exactly the same way. Of course, you know, this is their first. This is what's it? ILCA. It's their first foray into doing a Pokemon game. I'm sure they are patching and working on things, and their second go around, if there is a second go around, I'm sure it'll be a lot better. But yeah, Let's Go was fairly polished, I would say, for what it was. I haven't played Ninokuni, but Kitano Tatsu is asking, is a combat like Ninokuni? Have you played Ninokuni Stealth?
I have played Ninokuni, and the two games have completely different battle systems. The first game is a little bit like Pokemon, but not. I don't think it's comparable. But there are like cute little creatures that you can control.
Okay.
But it's somewhat different. But both games I highly recommend on Switch if you haven't tried them.
Well, there you go. There's a recommendation right there. It's one of those games I've been meaning to eventually get to too, but there's just so many games to play, and especially with RPGs. RPGs can suck up hours upon hours of your life, but there's a lot of really good ones.
Especially on Switch, there's more than anyone can realistically play.
Okay. I'm seeing Vanguard added me here. Vanguard is saying there is an origin form in BDSP. Okay, so if there's already an origin form in BDSP, maybe that my DLC idea won't work. I mean, they could still do that, but they also come up with something else. Or just not do DLC. We'll see. Kitano Tatsu. Also, Breath of the Wild was in the oven for more than half a decade. Based off interviews, Eiji Numa, there's an interview back from 2017, late 2017, where they said that they were already working on the next Legend of Zelda. Then, at E3 2019, they confirmed that it was a sequel to Breath of the Wild. And considering they were doing DLC and stuff coming out all throughout 2017, I think it's fair to say that they basically just jumped into making a sequel for Breath of the Wild 2, although they may have had some considerations that weren't always focused on that. But yeah, I mean, they've been working on Zelda. I mean, they pretty much work on Zelda 24/7. Like, even when they're done with one, they're already working on the next one.
Yeah, it's been in development for a very long time. Probably the biggest development staff that Nintendo's ever had for a game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they got a lot of people working on it.
Yeah, and I'll say it's almost a bit of a head scratcher, because assuming they jumped right into development, which it sounds like they did, and because they already had Breath of the Wild as a foundation with the physics and the world and all, you would think that they'd be able to pump this out sooner than later. But at this point, the development time for this game is longer than the initial Breath of the Wild. Like, by the time it comes out, say November 2022, it will have been a longer development cycle. So that it's fascinating to think that. Now, obviously, COVID had a tremendous impact on that, right? That's definitely impacted things. But even so, you would think normally if it's a game that's being built off of an already existing world and physics engine, like if it's a direct sequel, those tend to take less time than more time. So it's interesting that it's happening. I have some optimism that that's actually a suggestion that this game is just going to be really dense with content and some really cool new concepts. I think they took advantage of that so they could just kind of go crazy with the sequel. So I'm actually really excited for Breath of the Wild 2. I think it has potential to go down as like the best like open world game ever, which to me Breath of the Wild is already kind of in contention for that. So I think the sequel could do better. Now, I don't know if it will sell better, but like in terms of like my personal opinion, I think Breath of the Wild 2 has tons of potential. How do you feel about that stuff? Do you think Breath of the Wild 2 has potential to be better than Breath of the Wild 1?
I don't know. I need to see the towns and hopefully dungeons, but it's got a lot of potential. I mean, it might be, like I mentioned, it might be the biggest game Nintendo's ever developed. It might be the most ambitious. I just need to see it. I need to see more.
True.
A lot more.
True. That the lid has been fairly tight on this game, but there's so much really that they could do. Because I would love to see more bosses, more dungeons, more towns, crazy ideas. There's so much, but that could be its own separate podcast. So we'll save that for another day. Paco Salvador added me here. More about Zelda though. I think people forget that Breath of the Wild to Legends Arceus, that Breath of the Wild was in development for 5 to 6 years, had help from Monosoft, and the Zelda team is bigger than Game Freak as a whole. I mean, it is different, for sure. I think where people sort of have criticism for Pokemon and Game Freak is that Pokemon Company is huge and Pokemon makes so much money. People argue that there should be a bigger, more expensive development team working on the Pokemon games because of that. And that I'm not gonna pick sides on this because there's just so much to Pokemon, right? Like they're working on so many different things, Pokemon. Like if you want to, you can make the argument that the Pokemon experience goes beyond just the video games. There is the anime, there's the movies, there's the trading cards, there's the merchandising, there's the parks and all these different things and Pokemon centers, and there's a lot for Pokemon fans. There's a lot more out there for Pokemon fans than there are for Zelda fans. So you could argue all those different things are efforts by Pokemon Company. Now, if we just want to boil it down just to the video game, which again I would argue is not entirely fair if you're going to look at Pokemon Company as a whole in terms of what they can do. Yeah, I mean, the Zelda team is, I guess you could say, objectively better, but then also you could argue that the Zelda team is like the best developer in the history of gaming. So, I don't think that's a fair comparison. I don't think you should compare everything to Breath of the Wild, which to some people may be the best game of all time, or it's at least one of them. It's gotten more Game of the Year awards than any other game, if last I checked. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to compare Pokemon to Breath of the Wild. That's like, I don't know, comparing like a typical sort of like an average NBA. Well, I don't know if I want to say average, but let's say a standard NBA starter, which would be a pretty good basketball player, to LeBron James or like Michael Jordan in his prime. Like, obviously, there's going to be a quality difference there, but that doesn't mean that the other player isn't good or valuable. So I don't know. I'm a bit divided on that perspective. Let me see here. Thomas Owen Adamy. Speaking of games you were meant to get to, did you play both Ori games and did you enjoy them? I have both Ori games downloaded on my Switch. I've beaten the first one from beginning to end entirely, and I loved it. It was really, really good. I'm kind of waiting for an extra rainy day, and I will probably get into the second one because I absolutely love the first one. It was a joy, a real pleasure. It's good stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually haven't played those series. I want to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of Metroidvanias, I think you'll be really into it. I mean, it's it's a platformer sort of thing. It's pretty challenging, but it's good. Did you get into Metroid Dread? I know you said you were trying to get into Metroid earlier.
Yeah, I own Metroid Dread. I haven't started it yet. It's in my backlog.
Okay.
To be honest.
Okay.
It's tough.
I think. I mean, I guess. Do you tend to play Metroidvanias, or you're not really a Metroidvania?
I do. I love Castlevania games.
Okay, well,
specifically the Metroidvania ones. Like one of the most recent games I played was like the Castlevania Advance Collection, and I just breezed through those.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I do like Metroidvanias.
Oh, then I think Metroid Dread will probably be like a dream for you.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's
no
question I'm gonna like it. I just need the time and to get through some of this other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's just a lot. There's a lot out there. There's games to play, and then there's our lives with everything we have to do with those. So I totally get it. Yeah, but I mean, I think we've covered most of the things in the chat here. Stealth, is there anything else you want to speak on before we call it a night?
No, I think we covered it all. At least this week of Nintendo news. So there was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very happy just out of everything to see that Kirby trailer. That made me happy.
Yeah, that was my highlight of the week as well. It's beautiful stuff. But anyways, guys, make sure to check out Stealth. His Twitter is linked in the description below, and I know you have a Twitch as well. Have you that is also linked in your Twitter?
Yeah, that's linked. It's the same name, Stealth40K. Haven't streamed in like a year, just because of full-time job stuff. But I'm very active on Twitter, as you know. Open to conversation, discussion. If you like Nintendo and JRPGs, check me out.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Go check them out. But anyway, Stealth, it was a great discussion. Guys, thanks for watching, everyone. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. It would be appreciated. And I'll see you guys very soon. Take care. Cool. That was